Hello viewers, for DIYers here with another video for everyone. In this particular video here, I'll be showing you how to replace the rear differential fluid on your Dodge Ram. Here I am working with a third generation truck. This is a 2006 model to be exact, 1500 4x4, equipped with the 9.25 limited slip 12 bolt axle. In order to determine what type of rear axle your truck is equipped with, there will be a tag on your glove box, but mine didn't have that. You may also find a tag on one of the bolts on the differential cover, or you can decode the VIN, which I did. This can be done by the dealer or online. Once you know what type your truck has, now you can determine which fluid type is needed and if a friction modifier is required, which is for a limited slip. Your owner's manual should list the type of oil required, but may not list the capacities. According to the owner's manual, the maintenance intervals for the fluid is 25,000 kilometers or 15,000 miles. With this truck being new to me, any previous maintenance was fairly unknown, and I was having issues where the limited slip was shuddering on takeoffs or around corners. The amount required specifically for this truck was 2.5 liters or about 2.6 quarts. Being that I have a 4x4 model, I didn't need to elevate the rear of the truck. This may be different for a two-wheel drive model or even a lowered version. Here I have an oil pan ready just in case the cover starts to leak, and start loosening those 13mm bolts with a socket and ratchet. Once all have been broken loose, you can then remove them by hand. Here I'm using my magnetic nut cup made by OEM Tools from Mobile Distributor Supply. A link to this will be included in the video description. This is a great way to keep all those bolts safe so you don't lose any. The two top bolts are backed out about halfway, so I can tilt the bottom of the cover out and drain the oil. The cover from factory will have a sealant, and this is broken using a scraper. Make sure it does have smooth edges so you don't damage the sealing surface. Hammer it in from the side. It should be fairly easy to pop the seal. Once broken free, let the oil drain into the pan. While I'm letting the oil drain, I went ahead and cleaned up the bolts. They do have some sealant on the threads and under the head, which may cause some assembly issues. That was cleaned up using a wire brush. I removed the fill plug, which is just a rubber cap that snaps into place. It can be removed easily using a scraper or a screwdriver. Once the oil has stopped dripping, next is removing the cover. With the fill plug gone, this gives me a point to hold securely onto the cover. Remove the two top bolts, then pull it off. To remove the old sealant, a scraper can be used. Make sure you don't put any nicks or deep scratches in the sealing surface. Another option is using a razor blade, which works very well. There are also spray gasket removers on the market that also work. Using brake cleaner, I gave the inside of the differential a quick spray to remove any of the old sludgy oil. It's best to remove as much as possible of the old oil, as it'll just contaminate the new oil. Brake cleaner evaporates fast, cleans well, and doesn't leave any residue behind. Just make sure it's safe for the ABS sensor. I did find quite a bit of sludge at the bottom. Some agitation with my finger was required. I'd highly recommend wearing gloves here. There is also a magnet at the bottom. Make sure all the debris is removed from that, and it's clean as well. I used a shop towel, which is heavier than paper towel, and there's less risk of leaving any fibers behind. Remove any pooling of the fluid at the bottom. With the wind picking up at the moment, I covered up the assembly with a clean rag as protection. Next is using a scuffing pad. This will remove any remaining material on the sealing surface. The scuffing pad is equivalent to 400 grit. Make sure all the old sealant is removed. Do the same on the cover too. Remove all the old sealant, getting the bigger buildup with a scraper, and then finish up with a razor blade. Being that this is a limited slip, Dodge is known to have issues with the retaining clips for the clutch pack to fall out. There are two, one on each side of the differential case. I rolled the truck ahead to expose the one clip. The other can be inspected with a mirror. Don't remove these, as these will cause play in your clutches, causing more issues. If these do fall out, they can cause damage to the gears. And here's the magnet at the bottom. Make sure it's clean. I went ahead and degreased the cover to remove any residue, and finished up on the sealing surface with a scuffing pad. After that, the sealing surface is cleaned up with a solvent to remove any dirt or oil residue which may cause issues for the adhesion of the sealant. Using a white shop towel, I can see when it's eventually cleaned by inspecting the towel and folding it over as needed. Do the same for the axle side, cleaning the sealing surface, removing any chance of contamination. Next is using an oil-safe gasket maker. Apply it to the cover or axle. Be sure to consult with the product's instructions for the application process. We are looking at least 3 mm or 1/8 of an inch bead all the way around the cover. You can look at the sealing surface on the axle to determine where the best area is to apply the sealant. I went around all the fastener holes and made a straight line from each bolt hole. Once the cover is bolted into place, the bead will flatten out and there should be at least a 13 mm or 1/2 inch seal all the way around. There will be a specific work time for the sealant too, so make sure the application and installation is fairly quick. Don't miss any spots, otherwise you will have a leak and you'll be doing this all over again. Now install the cover. I left the fill plug out, so this gives me a spot to hold on to. Trying to line up the holes, then install the bolts. Install a few so the cover stays in place, then finish up with the rest. With the bolts being cleaned, they can be easily ran in by hand. Don't put any pressure on the cover just yet until all those bolts are on so the sealant doesn't get pushed into the holes. Now for tightening, I did this in 2 stages, which isn't necessarily needed, but it does help with seating correctly. The bolts must be tightened in a crisscross pattern to prevent the cover from deforming or it may cause a sealing issue. First was snugging everything up, and then I went over again to tighten up the bolts, using a crisscross pattern. Being that there is 12 bolts, a paint marker can be used to make sure you have everything tightened accordingly. The torque specification for the bolts are 30 foot-pounds or 40 Newton meters. Differentials do have vents to equalize the pressure. It's a good idea to check the vent line to ensure it's not plugged. This is on the axle tube on the driver's side and it has a single ear clamp. The clamp was cut off and the line was removed. Then using compressed air, blow out the line. Don't blow into the axle as you may force unwanted dirt inside. Make sure you don't lose the cap on the end of the exit point for the rubber line. Just use light pressure. 30 psi should be fine. A plugged vent may cause seals to seep. Then reinstall the line using a gear clamp and tighten. Sealants do have different dry times. You can refill the oil immediately or leave it for the next day. Refer to the product's instructions. Just to be safe, I did leave this for the next day. I removed the plug and next was filling. Make sure you do have a drain pan under the fill location to catch any dripping fluid. Here I'm going with a full synthetic 75W90 gear oil. I believe Mopar uses a synthetic from factory, and the oil weights will vary depending on where you're located and if you tow or not with your vehicle. Refer to your owner's manual for more information. Being that this is a bag type container, putting the oil in is very easy. You can also use a small electric pump, a pressure filler such as what I used on the brake fluid flush video, or a manual handheld suction pump. There is enough room here, so if you have a smaller container you can install a hose barb on the lid and have a hose attached to it. Being that this is a limited slip, a friction modifier is required for the clutches. Some oils already have this additive. This oil I am using does. However, after a quick trip up the road, I did notice a little chatter. If that's the case, and you find out after, use a vacuum pump such as what is used for bleeding brakes to extract some of the fluid from the fill hole. The amount of friction modifier required is based on how much oil is used, and that will vary between manufacturers. If your fluid doesn't have a friction modifier, install that before filling the oil. Friction modifiers will change the lubricating qualities of the oil. Too little will cause chatter and damage in the long run. Too much will also cause issues. The effects will vary depending on the condition of your clutches. The oil will be the correct level once the fluid drips out of the fill hole. Push in the rubber plug and make sure you don't have any leaks. Wipe off any excessive fluid residue so you can easily spot a leak. Take it for a drive and ensure there's no issues with the limited slip if equipped, and check for any leaks again. New videos are released every week on my channel. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It's a huge help to me, and leave a comment below if you found this tutorial helpful. And if you're not a subscriber, be sure to also hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.